Polaris RZR. Your life demands a tire that provides durability, comfort, and performance, and that's what General Tire delivers for you. From the all-season grip of the Grabber UHP to the comfort and on-road manners of the Grabber HTS to the durability and off-road traction of the Grabber AT2, General has a tire that will help get you where you need to go. So let us take you on your next big adventure. Tweet us at General Tire, hashtag anywhere is possible, because with General Tire, anywhere is possible. When looking for a new wheel for your off-road vehicle, car, truck, or UTV, the choice is easy. You choose what the pros use. Rob McCachran, Keegan Kincaid, and myself, Jim Beaver, all exclusively use Vision Wheel, whether we're dominating Baja, taking the cup at Crandon, or shredding UTVs. Vision Wheel's trend-setting designs and durability will set you apart from the competition and your friends. Check out visionwheel.com or at Vision Wheel on social media to learn more. Looking to have some fun on four wheels? Dirtfish Rally School has you covered. Packing as much adrenaline and adventure as you can handle into high-performance all-wheel drive and rear-wheel drive Subaru rally cars is where the fun begins at Dirtfish. Just 30 minutes outside of Seattle and Snoqualmie, you'll get a chance to train up to 3 full days with some of the country's best instructors and be put through the high-octane rush of rally on mud, dirt, and tarmac. Get started today and call 425-888-7715 or visit us online at dirtfish.com and use code 911 for a 15% discount.
Life is all about sound, the sound of sports, the sound of the racetrack, and the sound of your vehicle. Don't drive around listening to this. Drive around listening to the sound of performance. Gibson Performance. Gibson Performance Exhaust is the company who can turn this into this. Remember that life is all about sound, and Gibson Exhaust is the sound of performance. Check out your next catback exhaust system, headers, muffler, or UTV exhaust at GibsonPerformance.com and get more power and more sound.
Like what you hear? Catch all the back episodes of the Down and Dirty Radio Show on Apple Podcast, and be sure to rate, review, and subscribe.
Welcome back to the General Tire Down and Dirty Show, powered by Polaris RZR. Jim Beaver and Alex Rossi here, hanging tight in hour number 1. Welcome to everybody tuning in on Sirius XM Channel 211, Dan Patrick Radio, and also on the American Forces Network, as well as Sports Byline USA, Apple Podcasts, Podcast One, and everywhere else you listen to the show. Alex, let's talk a little bit about when you went and raced in Europe. Into last year, Autosport had, kind of a top 50 drivers type of thing, and I think you were number 6 on the list. And obviously, I know we've talked about your time in Europe before, but, and coming back here to the States, and how, there was actually a lot of people, because of your last name, things like that, they didn't really associate you as being an American driver, and it's kind of the past 3 or 4 years has been a process, you know what I mean, of almost rebuilding, Alex Rossi, or but you see something like that where now all of a sudden, Formula One, the doors closed there. You went to IndyCar, you found a home. You're one of the top guys in the sport. Now you see the guys in Europe and things like Autosport recognizing you, going, "Oh man!" I mean, is that a little bit justifying for you? Going, it's like, kind of like, hey, you guys maybe should have taken a chance on me, and obviously, you're completely happy with where you're at now in your career, but is there part of you that kind of puts a little bit of smile on your face because you're getting that recognition in Europe now?
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I never felt like I felt really at home in Europe from the beginning, and I was able to be fortunate enough to be in teams that were good enough to win in every series that I competed in over there, and kind of got to F1 for the most part on merit. And so I never felt as though there wasn't kind of a respect or at least a knowledge that I had the capability of getting to F1. It was solely that Formula One's a very, very money driven sport, and at the end of the day, if you're not a Lewis Hamilton to a Sebastian Vettel to a Kimi Räikkönen type thing, there's probably 8 to 9 to 10 guys maybe that legitimately get paid to provide driving services in Formula One. And the other guys, while they get a paycheck, there's something else that they're bringing to the table. So, I'll use a Carlos Sainz, for example, who's a supremely talented driver, was very good in the kind of lower formulas and won in everything that he did. But his father owned a lot of the a fuel station in Spain, and I'm drawing a blank on the name of it now. But it was like an equivalent of a Shell, but in Spain only. And he was able to kind of subsidize with Red Bull shelving space and display cases in all of his gas stations for a trade to help, offset his son's racing career, right? So yes, Carlos is a very good driver, but he would have never gotten the Red Bull deal had his father not had the gas stations to be able to display Red Bull products more predominantly than, say, a Monster or another type of energy drink competitor, which for Red Bull is brand value and awareness. So there's always some backstory to most of the guys in F1, unless you're kind of a superhuman superstar like a Lewis or a Max Verstappen or something where, it's purely they got there on talent. And I'm not saying that I was in that category, but what I am saying is that, we were just relying on that. We didn't have anything else really to offer a team. And ultimately, in my mind, that's one of the biggest downfalls of Formula One is it costs so much for these manufacturers to run each year. They need help from drivers. And that's not really the way it should be.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. And it just seems funny because I think motorsports, and obviously, the U.S. is a little bit different, but, it's still very much the same. And it's, it used to be you just could be a driver. Now it's, what's your social media following? What's your business connections? What's your media value? What do you do any TV? Do you have a YouTube channel? There's so much more now. And it's like, it's kind of crazy, especially in the last 10 years, this massive shift we've seen, whether you're Alex Rossi racing IndyCar, you're Jim Beaver racing off-road or somebody in Europe. It's just funny that the whole business model and what a driver brings to the table is so completely different now than it was even a decade ago,
No, it is. And in a way, it's kind of always existed, I think, to some degree. But yeah, I mean, definitely these days, as kind of the fan bases change and the budgets seemingly seem to go higher and higher each year, teams, they're businesses, right? And first and foremost, the team owners need to keep their lights on and feed their families at home as well. So I understand where it comes from, but it's a frustrating dynamic if you're on the driver's side of things trying to get a deal done. But, ultimately, as you said, it's the same across all different forms of motorsports, whether it's off-road or IndyCar or go-karts or Formula One or what have you.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about you a little bit because you're one of the few guys, a lot of guys, they're scared to kind of branch out. And you've kind of become like one of those everymans, like I'll drive anything with wheels, and obviously you're in IndyCar. We see it 24 Hours of Daytona. You've gone and done the Baja 1000 with Honda. You went down to Australia and did some supercar racing. Like, seems like you just genuinely enjoy driving anything and you like kind of putting yourself out of your element, so you can learn a little bit. I that's one thing I've always admired. Like, you're one of those guys like a Mario Andretti and, and a Robbie Gordon and there's quite a few. I mean, it looks like Fernando Alonso's kind of got into that where he just wants to drive everything, but I feel like you as a driver, you just like being behind the wheel.
I do. Yes. It's kind of funny how it all happened. I'll admit I never really went out looking for any of it. Except for probably Baja, because, I've been a fan of that event for a long time. And when I met Jeff Proctor back in 2017, I kind of alluded to the fact that I'd love to race for him one day. And he was like, okay, we'll stay in touch and we'll see if we can make it happen type thing. But, the thing in Australia came about because, Michael Andretti has a partnership with a V8 team down there. And it's called Walkinshaw Andretti United, and they were running a kind of a third car for the Bathurst 1000, which is their Indy 500 over there, and they were running kind of I don't know what the correct term is anymore, but like a wild card car. And so when Michael asked if I'd be willing to do it, obviously for sure, like I'm not ever going to say no to something like that. And then the endurance stuff with Acura Team Penske, that all came through Honda. So after, we were starting to have a lot of really good success in IndyCar and winning races together and, fighting for championships, everyone at HPD and Honda was happy. And they had a need for a third driver for the endurance events, the 24 Hours Daytona, 12 Hours Sebring, Petit Le Mans, et cetera. And so, they asked if I'd be willing to do that. And you're never going to, pass up an opportunity to drive for Team Penske in a class leading car, because, ultimately there's a lot of opportunities to drive in Daytona in different classes and go for class wins, but the opportunity to go for an outright, victory in one of those endurance events doesn't come along very often. And that if you're driving for Team Penske, it's going to be good equipment. So that was an easy decision as well. So I've been very fortunate to kind of have these things come together and then fall into my lap in a way. And, it's just funny timing how it all kind of happened at the same time, with Baja, my debut there in 2018, and then Daytona coming quickly thereafter that in 2019, and then Bathurst in October of 2019. So it's been a wild ride, and look forward to continuing it. And hopefully we can get some wins in at least one of those things pretty soon.
Yeah. How weird is it for you to be walking into a Penske garage? Because 95% of the time, obviously you're competing against them on track. How weird is it for you all of a sudden to be wearing a Penske driver's suit and walking into that garage area?
It was strange for, I think, everyone, me, them, my team, Andretti Autosport and IndyCar. Like, everyone was like, how's this going to work? But, Team Penske is a very big organization. And so every time that I go to the shop, every time that, I'm on conference calls or whatever, everyone gets it. Like, everyone's super respectful of each other's kind of place, and there's no crossover in engineers either. So It's really easy to just not talk about IndyCar other than socially, right? So there's never a feeling that, I'm being put in a weird place or they're being put in a weird place and having to hide things. It's a very different kind of program. It's just kind of the name is there. So it's the weirdest part is, Team Penske is a very kind of corporate business type kind of look. And so for those events, like, I actually shave my face, and, all of my Andretti mechanics love to break my balls about that every time that I come to an IndyCar event after one of the Penske tests or races or whatever. And they're like, oh, I see how it is type thing. It's like, they just love to give me crap about it. But at the end of the day, it's a uniform, right? So you kind of got to oblige by each team's rules, if you will.
Yeah. Well, going back to talking about 24 Hours of Daytona, I want to ask you, because I think we're going back to like 2014, 15. I can't remember the year, but you drove, out of all the weird things you've driven, you drove a Delta Wing, dude. How was that? Because those things are, one, they're just bizarre to look at, but that has to drive like unlike anything you've ever been behind the wheel of, right?
It was horrible. I'll be honest. I'm not even going to be politically correct. It was one of the worst things I think I've ever driven. It was very fast around Daytona. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, we qualified fourth overall, like, outright. Like, it was fast. I think it was like somewhere near 15 miles an hour quicker than the DP cars in the straight line. And then kind of gave all that time back up in the infield, but was just a rocket ship on the oval. So it was unique. It was very ahead of its time in a lot of ways. And ultimately, it didn't work because, race cars should have, there's a certain element of physics that work for a race car. Yeah. And this kind of tried to defy it all. And while it had moments of speed, it ultimately just wasn't a very well-balanced, well-performing car in corners or braking. It was just a rocket ship in a straight line. So I think had it ever made it to Le Mans, which honestly was its original intention, or even Indianapolis for a period of time, that was going to be the new Indy car, I think it would have been exceptionally fast. But for what it was trying to do in IMSA in America on road courses, it was not made for it in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah. Well, talking about all these different series, things you've driven, at this point, is there anything out there where you'd still like to drive it, or any events, one-off events? Is there any bucket lists, like, down the road, like, you're going, at some point it'd be kind of fun to go and do that?
I want to do more of the desert races. It's unfortunate that, the scheduling doesn't really allow for anything except for the 1000. Yeah. Unfortunate may be a wrong word, because ultimately I think that's the best race you can do. But, I'd love to do some other desert races. And then also, I've never driven a cup car. I'm not saying that I'm looking to do that anytime soon, but definitely before, I hang up the racing helmet, I'd love to do some